Hello, this is Alice Wheaton. We're going to talk today about how to stand out from the crowd. And the information I gained from this was really about learning about improv theater. So improv theater, in improv, the characters on the stage constantly shift their position from high status to low status. And really, so do people in our conversations. I'll give you an example. There's a great new show called Madam Secretary. It's on at Sunday night. And she worked with the CIA, and then she, I think, was a professor. And then what happened is that the president himself came and asked her to be Secretary of State. And so she, of course, has a protagonist, someone who doesn't like her. And what I noticed on last Sunday night, she did a wonderful, she, created a coup and got great results for the U.S. And the person that she reports to, who then reports to the president, said, oh, that was nice. And she had a little tiny bit of a meltdown because she didn't think the nice equated to the results that she had achieved. And so while she was asking him for more compliments, it was easy to see that she was positioning herself as low status compared to him. And so why are we talking about low status, high status? It's because when we're in front of our customers, we communicate who we are and what we are. Let's start with a handshake. If you grab someone's hand and squeeze so hard that the person really wants to wince, that's really low status. We think that it conveys strength, but what it is over the top. So the question in the person's mind was, why would someone need to be over the top with a handshake? Trying too hard, low status. And so it's easier said than done, really, I guess is what I want to say, to be conscious of low status and high status. Another very, very common way that salespeople demonstrate low status is by showing up and talking too much. In addition, they use words such as stuff and things, and they don't speak in equivocal. They use unequivocal. They don't speak in unequivocal language. They equivocate by saying, "I'll try," and "we'll see." And so that's a low status conversation. And so we may have the most brilliant knowledge in the world, but if we are perceived as being a buffoon, and speaking of buffoons, the higher up the organizations you go, the more enthusiasm you feel, the more like a buffoon will be perceived. Because the higher up the organization, the more credibility is important. And credibility is important everywhere. But if you're talking to a CEO of a multinational company and you're Mr. or Ms. Enthusiasm, that means that you're emanating all that energy, but it's all about you. So again, you'd be seen as low status. So that low status, so then holding people hostage for feedback. So when you get who you are and you get who you're not, and a personal compliment doesn't knock you off your pedestal or put you on a pedestal, that's high status. So high status is when you are in your own zone and you're neither made worse off or better off because suddenly you receive some feedback. Is it nice to be acknowledged? Of course. But I had an instructor once that used to say, Alice, never forget that one word to the wise is sufficient. I now know what she meant by that. And we speak about ourselves a lot. Some people are disparaging There's someone people say, oh, God, I was so stupid, or how could I have thought of that? And so, I would prefer to say, sometimes I get it right and sometimes I make mistakes. I'm a perfectly imperfect human woman. But when we continually disparage ourselves or make fun of ourselves, then we're communicating, unless you're a comedian ourselves. Yeah, of course. If you're a comedian, fine. But when we say things about ourselves and other people listen, I think Maya Angelou told Oprah this years ago. She said, Oprah, when people tell you who they are, you be sure to believe them. We talked earlier about the need for approval. Well, it comes from self-doubt. When my clients rehire me, that's all the approval that I need. But having to hear it from my clients or from my associates, oh, you do so great, you're doing so great. And actually, some speakers, when they finish the stage, they love the adulation and the crowds that form around them. I not so much. The reason is that I am thanked by their applause, and that's good enough for me. Now, if somebody wants to talk afterwards, I'm happy and hoping to do that. But I would rather they talk about content than saying how good the speech was or so on. And so mental toughness, where does it come from? Where does it go? Mental toughness is the ability to know who you are or who you're not, the ability to fail and try again, the ability to be internally, your locus of control to be internal, to be internally motivated. And the reason is that then when you've got that mental toughness, you can endure where others don't. And I read a book years ago, and I know it was written by a Canadian professor, I think from McMaster, but I'm not sure. And the title of it was Mental Toughness, and I haven't been able to find it. And he did a study of people in airports whose plane were delayed. And he found that the more still a person was during the wait, the long wait, the less stress they actually felt. That the person who was able to sit still and be calm were more mentally tough, meaning they didn't fall apart and didn't scream at the flight attendants and so on. And so isn't that interesting? That mental toughness in this particular instance was equated to that ability to have that internal locus of control, that the airplane falling, the airplane being late did not make them feel any worse. It wasn't their preference, but they chose to be happy anyway, or they chose to be content and serene anyway. Mental toughness is important because life throws us a lot of challenges. That's just life. Some people I know say that our job is to learn how to take life on life's terms, and that is mental toughness, that you can take life on life's terms. You do what you can to get the outcome that you want. But when that outcome doesn't happen, do you fall apart or do you shrug your shoulders and move on? That's why mental toughness is important, is that we don't become undone by the vicissitudes of life, as it were. And so it gives us authority over our own life. When we're mentally tough, it gives us authority over our own life. I'm going to say that again. When we are mentally tough, we have authority over our own life. People die for that freedom. But you know, Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist, and he was a Jew who was in the concentration camp. And he has a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And in the concentration camp, what he found is that what made him survive and remain healthy, whereas, you know, compatriots were dying by the dozen. was that he had authority over what he thought. That he found out that his captors could beat him, they could break bones, but he did the one place where they couldn't get to was his mind. And so he had authority over his own mind. His mental toughness created emotional safety. And yes, you can have both, authority over our own mind and emotional safety. And if we don't have, and if we do have authority over our own thoughts and authority over our own feelings, then what happens is that we don't fall into the lazy zone. We don't become mentally lazy, because guess what? There are many, many, many opportunities during the run of a day for us to get mad. Think about driving home and someone cuts it off. Well, when someone's driving ahead of me and they're really piddling and not moving out of the fast lane, I just think, well, they probably just had surgery and they don't want to hurt their incision. Now, what does that do? It gives me authority over how I react to that. And so, because if we don't play with our minds that way, we become obsolete and lazy, and there's no future in that. So I'll go back to that. Nothing happens until something moves. Yeah. The thing is that stasis, when we have a bunch of water sitting on our counter and it stays in stasis, then what happens is that bacteria grows. There is one of the fastest ways to grow bacteria is to let water sit still. That's why I cannot stand the thoughts of using humidifiers. When I was an intensive care nurse, we would humidify oxygen through a humidifier, but what we always did was put copper wire into that humidifier, because copper has an antiseptic, antibacterial effect. So for goodness sake, and this has nothing to do with this video, this webinar, but if we're talking about stasis, if you have a humidifier, make sure you put some copper wire in it before you put it in your room. Otherwise, it's going to breed bacteria and blow it out all over you. So nothing happens until something moves. Stasis is not really the universe. The universe is all about action. Night becomes day. Earth moves on its axis. The sun, the rain falls, the wind blows, the grass grows, the grass dies. It's all about stasis. It's all about activity. And you know what? So many people don't want to move into profound activity. They'd rather stay the same. Someone who is mentally tough lives in a friendly universe. I've traveled extensively through all kinds of countries. I've traveled in countries that were close to war. And for some reason, I was safe. I've traveled in countries where I was accosted. I was traveling alone as a woman, and I was accosted every day. And if you want to, there's a movie called 3 Nights in Cairo that describes that. But nevertheless, even though I was accosted, I knew I was still safe. There was that general feeling of being at peace in the world. And you may as well decide that the universe is friendly. What's your choice? If you're going to decide that the universe is unfriendly, it makes for a stressful life, and that doesn't help mental toughness or mental health. Yes, changing your perception. Maybe 10 years ago now, I moved into this new neighborhood, and in the spring, the cleaners come and clean up the little tiny pebbles. And someone was visiting me, and the cleaners had to go around it, and I got a call from a neighbor saying, you know, who do you think you are leaving this truck out there? This means now that the rocks are not going to get cleaned up, and it's going to be on, you know, I'm going to run the risk of getting a windshield cracked in my car. And she just grew big tirade. I said, well, who's speaking? She said, that's none of your business. I kind of figured out who it was. And so this person, when I passed by her house walking my dogs, I would see her reading a book all the time. And so I immediately scurried around my house, picked up a big armful of books, and then I waited 4 or 5 days. But 4 or 5 days later, I tapped on her door and said, hey, I see you reading books a lot. I've got these, and I always recycle my fiction. Would you enjoy them and then pass them on to someone else? She accepted them, and she has been wonderful to me ever since. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that she's the one, but nevertheless, I decided to have fun with the attack instead of attack back. Because then one of the webinars before, I talked about the difference between love and peace of mind, love and fear. Well, fear would have me attacking back. Love and peace of mind would have me having fun with the fear and taking over a whole bunch of books. And you know what? I have now 2 dogs. One of them is a pit bull, and I apologized a while ago to her for the barking they do. And she said, oh, don't you worry. When they bark, I say thank you, because I know that if someone came into my backyard, they'd let me know. Now, she wouldn't have said that 10 years ago, but she said it just last week. So when you change the way you look at things and people, then the people and the things you look at change. And I remind myself of that story. I tell it to remind myself, remember how you did this? Because it's a good lesson for me too. So in order for particles to take form, they gain energy from an invisible force. And you know that invisible force is your mind, your beliefs, your emotions, your feelings. We can't see our mind walking around. We can see our arms and legs and our face, but we can't see our mind and our beliefs and our thoughts. You know what? That's a good analogy for it's the invisible things within us, within our own power, that create most of the change. No tree has branches so foolish as to fight amongst themselves. This is a saying that I've heard for quite a while, but I don't know where it came from. But I will tell you this. I do have some deciduous trees, some blue spruces, and then I've got a ash tree or something in front of it. And the ash trees, the leaves are starting to invade the space of blue spruce, and the blue spruce don't like that, so they're moving away. But you know, they're moving away ever so gradually. They're not putting up a fight. I, however, am putting up a fight with the city for asking them to come and prune their tree. So our mind wants to do something. Have you heard the expression monkey mind? Well, our mind wants to do something, and guess what it does? It seems to default to emotions of fear, doubt, and insecurity. And those feelings fight with our mind. We need to be vigilant to those and ask ourselves, see, what happens is that most of us believe everything we think. Oh no, don't believe everything you think. In fact, doubt a lot of what you think, including I'm stupid or I'm useless or whatever. I don't know what it is that people say to themselves in the mirrors when they're having a crisis of self-esteem. But I often say, if I'm going to say something to myself, it's, oh, Alice, with all you got going for you, why haven't you amounted to more than this? And so then I ask myself, oh gosh, what book do I have to write now? Anyway, emotions of fear, doubt, and insecurity fight with our mind. And very often we let them win. Our mind is practical. This frontal part here, this is the executive center of our brain. It's way, way, way bigger than the little emotional center of our brain. The amygdala is the size of an almond. This is our frontal lobe. When I see a baby with a big honking frontal lobe, I want to say to the mom, hey, Mom, look at your baby with a big executive center. But what happens is that the almond, that fear center, is so strong that the emotions of fear, doubt, and insecurity often take over. And that's so sad. So here's my rule. Show up bigger than you feel. Ask for what you want. Be willing to be rejected, and you'll get 80% of what you ask for. Doesn't matter what you're saying to yourself. It doesn't matter about the fear, doubt, and insecurity. Go ahead. Ask in the midst of the fear. I want to thank you for being a great audience today. I think I'd have to say that this is one of my favorite webinars because I've really had to learn how to do this myself. Anything I've presented to you in this presentation today and all the other webinars, but this one is really, really dear because I grew up completely isolated in a very, very northern town in Newfoundland, and somehow I have learned how to manage the world, and I'm convinced that I manage the world by managing my mind. Bye for now.